Hello and welcome back to What's the Deal Tutorials. It's me, Dill, and we're here with Stellaris, and I'm going to teach you today about ships. In specific, we're going to talk about the basics of ships, like how they are classified, what are their types, what are they good for, and how to use them. We'll go over a little bit about fleets and what capacities they have, defense platforms and what limiting capacities they have, and give you some tips about how to use and group your fleets more effectively. So let's go ahead and get started. Ship classifications. Ships are broken down into two categories. There are civilian ships, in which there are construction ships, science vessels, and colony ships, and they're found here. There are also military ships, like your transport ships for your troops. Those are found here under armies. And your military ships. These are your star fleets, found here under military fleets. Your civilian ships are used to expand your empire by building infrastructure and exploring the areas around you, as well as colonizing planets. Your military vessels are for harassing your enemies, defending your territory, and taking what you believe is rightfully yours by claiming an alien's territory using the claim system, and we'll talk about that in a later video. So, civilian ships. We'll begin with the construction ship. Its job is to build infrastructure to exploit resources, and also to expand your territory by building outposts in surveyed systems. So let's go ahead and look at our construction ship here. It is sitting in a system which needs resources to be exploited. So we can do two things. We can right-click directly and build a mining station with them, or we can go out to the star menu, map menu, and use right-click and then build there. And if we hold down the shift button, we can tell it to build the research stations here. Click, let go of the shift button, and now you see there's extra orders down here so that everything is going to be built. But let's say we also wanted to expand our territory right after this with a construction ship. We would go ahead, right-click here per se, and then build a starbase outpost. We do not have the influence right now to do this, but if we did, we could go ahead and claim the system because it's already been surveyed. One of the other duties of the civilian ship is to build megastructures, as we can see here. But we do not have any megastructures unlocked. These megastructures involve ring worlds, habitats, as well as other things such as a defensive structure for your empire, a research structure for your empire, and so on. These are found much later in the game, down the research trees. The next vessel we'd like to talk about is the science vessel. So we're going to come down here and see that we have some science vessels sitting around. We have two science vessels down here, here and here. We also have examples of surveyed systems, here, here, and here, and an example of an unsurveyed system, here, that just so happens to have a primitive life civilization in it. The science vessel's job is to explore these systems, which are unsurveyed, and exploring will merely open them up. You see how some nodes out here, we don't know, it's completely unknown. So you can send a science vessel out to just explore it. It will visit it and that's it. Or you can send one out to survey it, and that's going to evaluate all of the planet's valuables and resources that it can offer your empire. So with that in mind, we can go ahead and focus back on these science vessels. Another task of science vessels is to research special projects that come about within the storyline that Stellaris presents you through its events. These projects can be accessed through your situation log, but ultimately you're going to need to get a vessel such as this one, or this one, and tell them to research the projects in the system. That's a right click on the system and then click research projects in the system. Or you could go directly to the planet with a science vessel equipped. It will show you where it is. Then you can go ahead and right click and research the project. They are also responsible for anomalies. We can see here there is an anomaly. And anomalies are interesting things within the galaxy that your science vessels can explore for different bonuses. You'll want to get as many of these bonuses under your belt as possible in the early game. The last task that a science vessel can be given is to aid research. As we can see here in the Sol system, we have a science vessel. And if we look to Earth, we will see it hovering around. It is assisting research, which is giving a bonus to all research buildings on the planet. And to do that, you would just take it, right-click the planet, and tell it to assist research. But only one starship can assist research at a time. The final civilian ship we're going to talk about is the colony ship. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Here it is. It's a large vessel designed to carry a large amount of people to the new world and provide the infrastructure needed to get a colony set up. They are incredibly slow ships and very expensive and take a decent amount of time to make. So you always want to make them before your planets are ready to be colonized and move them out as quick as possible. You do not want them sitting around as their upkeep cost is rather high. So, with this ship here, we can go ahead and right-click it and tell it to colonize the planet, which is the main job of the colonizer. And there we go. It will then begin to colonize the planet. And now our planet will be colonized. We have to wait some time until a proper system is set up, but then afterwards we can start exploiting the planet. And now we talk about military ships, which is the backbone of the game. You're always going to be using them to defend yourself, to deter enemies, and to assert your dominance over your enemies. And so let's begin by talking about the transport fleet. And specifically, the transport ship within the fleet. This ship carries one army. This army can be brought to a planet like yours to defend, or it can be brought to a planet like an enemy's to take. And you need them in order to expand your territory, because if you would like to conquer a system, you must not only take over its central starbase, but, well, that one. But you must also invade all of its planets. Let's start our look at military vessels with the Corvette. It is the smallest vessel, but it is also the most agile and the most capable of suppressing pirates, who will emerge to prey upon your trade routes if you do not keep them protected. The next strongest vessel after that is the destroyer. It has more weaponry, it also has medium platforms and more slots for armor and shields, but of course it is not as evasive as a result and not as able to suppress pirates. The next level is cruisers, and the final level of normal ship is battleship. After which there are some special ships. The Titan, it requires the Apocalypse DLC. The Colossus, which requires the Apocalypse DLC. The Juggernaut, which requires the Federation's DLC. And the Star Eater, which requires the Nemesis DLC. These ships are also limited in the amount that you can have. As you can see here, because I do not have Nemesis, you can only see a limitation for Titan, Colossus, and Juggernaut. But let's talk about the Titan and its role. The Titan is a very large warship, and you can only have a limited amount of them in your empire because they are quite powerful and require a lot to keep up. The Colossus is a large starship which is not capable of defeating any other starship on itself. Its job is to take a planet and to destroy it. And it comes in many different flavors, these destroyers, and those are dependent on the ethics of your society. But the result is the same. That planet is taken out of commission, sans some very special weapons. No one will be able to use it again. The Juggernaut is a very large vessel that is not only capable of defending itself, but producing other vessels. You can think of it as a mobile shipyard that also has battle armaments and thrusters. Now let's talk about the Star Eater, which is the newest vessel introduced in the newest DLC, Nemesis. Its role is to take a star, like the one seen here, and to blow it up. By blowing it up, it makes all of the fleets in the system but itself go missing in action, which means that the Empire cannot use them, that includes you, for a period of time until they show up. It will destroy every single planet and created thing within the system. And finally, it will give the Assaulter a amount of dark matter that is dependent on the map size. So now let's talk about defense platforms. And to do that, we're at our border over here with an enemy. Pirates. Organized pirates. We would like to defend ourselves against them and not have to pay them tribute so much. To do this, we would like to have a defensive position. So how do we build these defensive platforms? You go ahead and you click your station. That'll bring up the station menu. You click Defenses tab down here, and then you can go ahead and build them. These stations will sit around your starbase and augment its defense, making it far more strong and able to fend off invaders by itself or to help the fleet that is stationed there with it. The last type of ships are special ships, and an example here is Bubbles, a space amoeba. As you can see, it's not really a corvette or anything, it's a large space organism in its teal class. These things come about from special events, and oftentimes they are limited to their own fleet. Your military ships will be organized into fleets. This is a collection of ships whose job is to stay together, help each other, and kill the enemy. Now, fleets cannot be infinitely large. We are limited. As we can see up here, we are using 15 units of logistics out of the 30 that is possible for our fleet. And if we look up here, we see a naval capacity that tells us that we are using 15 units of fleets out of a total of 50 that we can support, period. Now, the difference between this fleet size and this naval capacity is fleet size is hard. You cannot go above fleet size, and that's for one individual fleet. Naval capacity is soft. You can go above your naval capacity, but there are negatives that affect your empire as a result. And this is how many starships that you can have, period, within your empire. So that is spread across multiple fleets. The final thing we will talk about is the platform's capacity. As you can see here, there are 6 total that I can use, and I am using none of them. Now, as our star bases are upgraded in size, they will get more and more defense platforms available to them, as well as having some special buildings which unlock even more. So, with a basic understanding of ships under us, let's talk about some tips that will help you use your ships to their maximum efficiency. First of which, you always want to use the outliner to keep track of what your ships are doing, where they are, and what status that they're in. You can see that First Fleet and Bubbles are docked because they have this little green icon. Here we have the construction ship, which is in orbit around something, but it's not docked. So we can see that it's in orbit, but it's not being serviced, so it's yellow. Then we have ships like this, who are just sitting there, doing nothing. They're in red, and they're sleeping. Or ships like these, who are busy. You'll always want to keep your starships active. It is a terrible waste of upkeep to keep them sitting there. There will be moments where they will be sitting there because there's nothing to do, but try your best to plan ahead and keep them as busy as possible. For selecting many ships at once, we can use Shift Select. To do this, you hold down the button Shift, and then you left-click on all the ships that you would like to select, and you can see that we have selected all of them. Now let's say that you would like to do this multiple times. Always get access to these 4 ships. You could hold down the button of Control and press a number of 1 all the way to 0, and that will assign a group. Let's call this group 1. Now I'm going to go ahead and click off. And if I want to access those again, I'll go ahead and press the number 1. And you can see all of them have been selected, and now we can give them all orders like meet up here at the Sol system. Now let's talk about the docked icon. This docked icon tells us that we are at a friendly station who can repair it. But further, if you have a certain upgrade on your starbase, such as the crew quarters, you can keep fleets docked at them and reduce their upkeep, allowing you to have a much larger fleet without it taxing your economy during peacetime. And that concludes our video on ships. We've learned about the types, what they're good for, how to use them, some tips in using them, and some limitations that they face. If you like the content, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and stay tuned for more. I'll see you out there.